that, just call down and confirm that you can hear people to mark off who we have, both for quorum purposes and kind of an audio check.
Great. I will call the roll, Chair. Asada Brown,
Here.
Monica Dillenberg,
Here.
Cecily Harris, I don't think Cecily's here yet, and I know she sometimes struggles with connectivity problems. Todd Kemery, Bob Moeller,
Here.
Jeremy Peichel,
Here.
Anthony Taylor, I see Anthony is here. He signed in on the chat, and he said, I am in transition. I will be fully on in 10 minutes. Anthony, we welcome you and look forward to seeing you fully on. Canna Yang.
There's a note from her in chat as well. It says, speaker isn't working. Going to try calling back in.
Oh, great. Canna, thank you. And Tony Russo, Jerry Russo.
Here.
And our council member liaison, Susan Vento.
Here.
All right, so that does give us more than 5. Even with our people that are sort of in transition, so we're fine there. So we'll call ourselves to order and start with approval of our agenda for the day, which we can do on a consensus basis. So I'll just pause for a moment to hear if there are any additions or edits that need to be made to the agenda. Otherwise, we'll consider it approved from there. Anything that needs to be added or changed on our agenda? All right, then we can consider our agenda approved as presented, and we'll move on to approval of minutes from January 6th, 2022. For that, we will take a motion, second, and discussion and vote as usual. So we'll take a motion from someone who is present at that meeting whenever you're ready.
Hi, this is Monica Dillenburg. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting.
All right, we have a motion from Monica. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. Second from Bob. Are there any corrections or discussion on our minutes from January? All right, hearing none, we'll go forward with a roll call vote to approve the minutes as presented. So go ahead with that again, Emmett.
We'll start with Asada Brown,
Aye.
Monica Dillenberg,
Aye.
Cecily Harris, Todd Kemery, Bob Moeller,
Here. Aye.
Jeremy Peichel,
Aye.
Anthony Taylor, Canna Yang, I think we might have some people in transition there, Cherry Russo, and I'll go with Tony Russo.
Aye. Right, so that, yes, and we have a message from Canna that says she's back. I see you as muted right now, Canna. I don't know if you can talk when that comes off. Try again. Yeah, I don't hear anything from you, so I might have to check out your audio settings there, see if we can get that fixed before we get to our next part. You could try messaging Greg on the side if you need help with any WebEx settings too. But it looks like our minutes are approved. I don't see any notes of any other votes for that. So we will move forward then. That brings us to the public invitation portion of our meeting. Emmett, have we heard anyone requesting to speak via email?
No, we haven't.
Okay, we have not received any for that. So that brings us on to our business items for the day. Our first one is the West Mississippi River Regional Trail Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund grant for Three Rivers Park District. We have Jessica Lee to present that. Go ahead, Jessica.
Thank you and good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, and Council Member. My name is Jessica Lee and I'm a Senior Park Planner for the Council. I'm here today to present Business Item 2022-27, West Mississippi River Regional Trail Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, the Tanberg property for Three Rivers Park District. Next slide, please. The West Mississippi River Regional Trail is located along the northeast border of Hennepin County alongside the Mississippi River and travels from Dayton through Champlin, Brooklyn Park, and Brooklyn Center. Next slide, please. The West Mississippi River Regional Trail is split into 4 segments as shown on the map on the left. Segments C and D are built and total about 10 miles. Segments A and B will add another 10 miles once built. The Tanberg property is part of Segment A in Dayton. This property contains 100 feet of Mississippi River shoreline and is also within the Mississippi River Corridor Critical Area, a designation that helps protect and preserve the river's biological and ecological functions. Next slide, please. Acquiring this property and others like it will allow for the regional trail to be built away from the busy road and will bring users closer to the river's natural setting. The seller has agreed to the appraised value of $230,000. The total acquisition cost is $350,000. The grant amount of $262,500 will be funded with Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and Council match, and Three Rivers will provide the 25% local match. I'll also note here that after these grant requests you're hearing today, approximately $9 million will remain in the Council's Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. Next slide, please. Our rationale for recommendation is that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund appropriation requirements, the West Mississippi River Regional Trail Master Plan, and Three Rivers is within its $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for the Parks and Trails Legacy Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. Next slide, please. So our recommendation today is to approve a grant of up to $262,500 to Three Rivers Park District to acquire the 1.01 acre Tanberg property located at 17660 Dayton Road in the city of Dayton for the West Mississippi River Regional Trail, and to authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the Council. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions. And Three Rivers staff is also here for questions.
Okay, that's short. This is a fairly straightforward thing. Do we have any questions for Jessica on this? Otherwise, would anyone like to make motions from this?
Hi, this is Monica Dillenburg. I would like to make a motion to approve the grant for the acquisition.
Okay, we have a motion for the proposed actions from the staff report. Is there a second for that?
I
This is Bob,
second.
I'll second.
Okay, I think I heard Commissioner Brown for that first. So that motion then is that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $262,500 to Three Rivers Park District to acquire the 1.01 acre Tanberg property located at 17660 Dayton River Road in the city of Dayton for the West Mississippi River Regional Trail, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the Council. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right, I guess hearing none, we'll move forward with roll call vote on that motion as presented. Go ahead with that, Emmett.
I'll begin again with Asada Brown.
Aye.
Next, Monica Dillenberg.
Aye.
Next, I'll go with Cecily Harris. Still not here. I think Cecily did tell me she was most likely not going to be there, so I just looked that up. Todd Kemmery. Next is Bob Mueller. Next is Bob Mueller. Bob, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Bob gives a thumbs up. Thank you, Bob. Jeremy Peichel.
Aye.
You, Jeremy. Next is Anthony Taylor. I know he's been in transit, so I don't know if you can indicate some way, Anthony. I see you on the screen. Next is Canna Yang, who's having audio trouble. Cherry Russo, is it okay if Canna messages us?
Yeah, as long as we read off whatever her message is for the record.
Hi, I transferred to audio on my phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi.
All right, thank you.
And Cherry Russo.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion carries as presented. Thank you, everybody. So that moves us on then to our second business item, which is another acquisition grant for Lake Billsby Regional Park from the Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund in Dakota County. And we have Jessica presenting again.
Thank you, Chair. Again, for the record, my name is Jessica Lee. I'm a park planner for the council. I'll now present business item 2022-28, Lake Billsby Regional Park, Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, the Augustine Schleusner property for Dakota County. Next slide, please. Lake Billsby Regional Park, established in 1970, is located on the southern border of Dakota County, along the north side of the Cannon River. Next slide, please. Lake Billsby is a 1,300-acre reservoir of the Cannon River. The regional park is 600 acres and has 2 units, the west unit, located on the northwest side of the lake and along the Cannon River, and the east unit on the northeast side of the lake adjacent to the Lake Billsby Dam. The east unit has been developed for recreational purposes and connects to the Goodhue County Billsby Park by a pedestrian and bicycle trail bridge. It also links to the Milltowns State Trail and provides access to the Cannon River State Water Trail. The west unit is largely undeveloped and contains restored prairie, wooded areas, river floodplain, and some inholdings, including the Augustine property. Next slide, please. The Augustine inholding is located on the western edge of the park boundary, as shown on this map in red. The property is 110.3 acres and contains woodlands, floodplain, and cropland that will be restored to prairie. It has about a mile of frontage on the Cannon River, and there are no structures on the property. Next slide, please. The Augustine property appraised at $440,600, and the seller has agreed to a purchase price of $446,600, which is 101.3% of their appraised value. The total acquisition cost is $484,548, and the grant amount of $363,411 will be funded with fiscal year 2021 Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and Council match. And Dakota County will provide the required 25% local match. Next slide, please. Our rationale for recommendation is that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund appropriation requirements, the Lake Billsby Regional Park Master Plan, and Dakota County is within its $1.7 million per fiscal year limit for the Parks and Trails Legacy Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund. Next slide, please. Our recommendation is to approve a grant of up to $363,411 to Dakota County to acquire the 110.3-acre Augustine Schleusner Trust property located in Randolph and Scioto Townships for Lake Billsby Regional Park, and to authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restricted covenant on behalf of the Council. Again, I'm happy to take questions, and Dakota County staff is also here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. What questions do we have on this one, if any? Or would anyone care to make a motion on this already?
This is Bob Mueller. I will move the motion.
Okay, we have a motion for the proposed actions from the staff report. Is there a second for that?
This is Asada. I second.
Okay, thank you. So we have motion is seconded that the Metropolitan Council approve a grant of up to $363,411 to Dakota County to acquire the 110.3 acre Augustine Schlusner property located in Randolph and Scioto Townships for Lake Billsby Regional Park, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Is there any discussion on that motion? Great, I guess hearing no discussion, we'll move on to a roll call vote on that motion as presented. Go ahead, Emmett.
Thanks, Chair Russo. I will once again start with Asada Brown,
Aye.
Monica Dillenberg,
Aye.
Cecily Harris, Todd Kemery, down to Bob Moeller.
Aye.
Thanks, Bob. Jeremy Peichel,
Aye.
Anthony Taylor, I think Anthony may still be in transition, so I will go to Kenna Yang
Aye.
and Tony Russo.
Aye. All right, that motion passed as presented. Thank you. All right, and that'll bring us on then to the information portion of our meeting already. We have our equity nudge item, talking about the Regional Parks and Trails Equity Tool. We have Darcy to present on that. We cannot hear you yet, Darcy. And I cannot read lips well enough to do that off the tiny little preview on WebEx.
Tony, I expect that out of you. Darcy's quite
Darcy's going to
good at
fiddle with
these
her
things.
connection.
Oops. Still can't hear you, Darcy.
How about now?
There we go.
Hello, good evening. Great to be here, Chair, Commissioners, Council member. My name is Darcy Vandegrift. I'm a principal researcher with Community Development, and I'm here this evening to share a tool that my colleagues and I in research work to develop to better understand the demographics of the region relative to the location of existing planned and in search parks and trails in the metro region. So this is going to be, a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I'm going to start with what I hope will show you. I hope you're seeing the planning overview page. Is that okay? And I'm starting here because I want to show you how you can get to this tool if you decide to go and explore it yourself. And I do encourage you to explore it yourself because there's just there's so many different findings that you can work with depending on what your curiosities are. And so I wanted to, let's make sure that I can get there. Oh, I'm actually on the wrong. Well, that's not a good start, is it? Let's see. So you go to parks, planning. Here you have equity tools, but you can actually see quite a few things here on the page that you can use. And this is called the Parks, Regional Parks and Trail Equity. We often call it the mapping tool, but this is how you can get there. So again, you go to our parks page, you go into planning, you choose equity tools, and you can click right there. And you will go into another platform that's known as a Shiny app. And it's good to know sometimes this can be a little bit of a finicky product, so you need to, it sometimes requires a little bit of patience. But you will see on this page, you can find, this is the landing page, a video user guide where you can dive into more of what I'm going to talk about here, and also a text user guide. And this is an overview. But I'm going to kind of walk through the examples of the system map and the unit level data. And I'm going to just do an overview with what you can do with the tools. So let's look first at the system map. And this will give us, as I said, it takes a second to load. It gives you an overview of the entire system. And there's some decisions that you can make here to tell the tool what kind of data that you're wanting to see. First of all, the map has several what we call layers or overviews. Or maps sort of layered on top of each other, and you get to choose those here. And we're starting out with just parks and trails and population data, but there are many other choices. So you can look at buffers if you're wanting to delineate, say, a 1 mile buffer around a trail, a 1.5 mile buffer around a trail, a 3 mile buffer around a park. You can choose that. You can also, if you're wanting to ask questions about sort of how our systems interlap between transit and parks, or sort of looking at equity and transportation, you can put on active transit stops. We're starting conversations about water trails, and you can look and choose on this map, and it will show you just where there's public access to water. You can also look at park entrances, super important if you're looking at transit and equity issues around households that don't have a car. You can also put bodies of water, and we are going to turn on agency boundaries for our conversation. But you can work and change those at any time. Without the buffer turned on, this choosing the buffer distance isn't super important, but I want to just walk through these other things that you can learn and explore before I look at a quick example with you. So population characteristics are those demographic characteristics that we so much want to know about when we're looking at who are underserved, adequately served, overserved by our park system, and want to look at questions of equitable use. And just to quickly read through the list of population characteristics, you can see them. So if you choose characteristics here, you can choose a variable to map, but you can look at questions of age, disability, race and ethnicity, language, national origin. Socioeconomic is percent living below 185% of the poverty line or mean household income. And you can also look at transportation, percentage of households without a vehicle. Now, the other choice that you can make is you can look at population estimates, and this is a tool that you can use, that planners can use, or any of us that are curious about where do we need to have a park or trail system to serve the population of the future. And if you choose this option, you'll be able to see current population or population density, what the population is predicted to look like in 2040 and the density in 2040, and then predicted growth in terms of number of people, and then relative growth in terms of percentage growth. And as you see, as we sort of move through these characteristics, I'm going to go back to population characteristics, and I'm just going to choose percent Spanish speakers. You can see it takes a second to load, but you will be given consolidated census tracts here, where you can see a darker color is a greater proportion of the variable that you're mapping, and a lighter color is smaller. So you can see, I'm going to zoom in here, Anoka County. And here we have Riverfront Islands of Peace Regional Park. And you can see that there's a larger proportion of Spanish speakers here, that 20% of the population in this census area north of the park is primarily Spanish speaking. So you can start to explore any number of questions here in terms of looking at who lives in proximity to your park. And so when you're thinking of either long range plans, what kinds of engagement you might want to pursue, what kinds of elements you might want to incorporate into your long-range plan when you're thinking about programming or multilingual signage or access to transportation who may be coming on public transit. All of these questions are things that you can begin to explore with this map. And you see here that just with a turn of the mouse wheel, I was able to zoom out so I could look at the region overall. Hope I'm not giving you a vertigo here, but you can also zoom in and see. And you can start to really see some interesting patterns here. And whether you're looking at language, at income, at ability, there's a lot of different areas to explore. One thing that I did not go into is that you can also in this tool look at existing parks and trails, but also as we're thinking of systems additions for the next regional parks policy plan, or we're thinking about already long-range plans, so-called master plans that are up and coming, we can also explore those instead. And so you still have, you see here what's happening. Again, sorry about the rapid shifts, but you see here in the light purple, you have these planned parks and trails, planned trails, but you still have that demographic characteristic of looking at percent Spanish speakers. So again, if you're thinking of in terms of long-range planning, you might want to think about multilingual engagement if you are if you have within the buffer a higher proportion of Spanish speakers. Or so. Yeah, so let's move here. So this is a way to get an overview of a larger area and really drill down on a specific, what we might call a variable, right? So that's looking at these demographic characteristics or also population growth in the future. But if we go back up to the top, we're able to get into some unit level data and some agency, kind of drill down at the level of an agency. And here I wanted to look at the variable of income. And here I'm going to look at people who are living at 185% below the poverty line. And again, so you can make these choices here. But again, let me just tell you a little bit about what we're seeing on the screen. So what I have chosen here is it's returning to me, I'm telling it, return to me the percentage of people who are living at 100, or households, sorry, not people, households that are living below 185% of the poverty line that live within 1 mile of a park or trail unit in Anoka County, and I'm asking it here to return existing planned and search units. And so we have green for existing, purple for planned, and kind of this gold color for search. So what we see here at the top, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So this asterisk at the top is the proportion for Anoka County as a whole that are 185% below the poverty line. So we see if we look down, that's about 15%, a little over. It's more like probably 16% that are 185% over the poverty line within a 1 mile buffer of all the units within Anoka County. So when you're just eyeballing this looking down, anything that is to the left of this asterisk are units that have a smaller proportion of households below the poverty line, and anything to the right has a higher percentage of households living below the poverty line. And of course, there is sort of we could ask, like, not getting hung up about what is the difference between 13%, 17%, although those may be questions you want to look at. But to me, it can become an interesting way to sort of eyeball questions about proximity and equitable use. So these units that you see to the right, you see that you are building a park or a trail that is increasing the number of households that are within that 1 mile buffer who are experiencing poverty. And if it is to the left, you are building or searching for a park or trail unit that have a lower percentage of population living in poverty. So this can be an important way of just looking at what are the trends around equitable use, and also what are the units that have a high proportion of what we might think of as an underserved population. So again, here's this Anoka County Riverfront Islands of Peace that has over 30% of the households within a 1 mile buffer are living below the poverty line, in which case thinking about investments in programming, investments in opportunities in that park are increasing the number of opportunities that are close by families, close by neighborhoods that have a higher proportion of families living in poverty. Now, we know really well that demographics alone does not need access, that building an invitational park system is more than just having the services or having the parks or trails or programming or engagement close by. And yet you do have to have that proximity in order to create access. And so this is one way to look at that. I'm not sure why I'm looking, there we go. So with that, that is really what I wanted to show you with these tools. I do want to give thanks to Anoka County and to Scott County for working with us to develop this tool, to beta test it with us, to talk about the features that they needed. This tool is being used to complete the first question in the equity analysis requirement. And it really needs to be used, and we think is being used, not as the final answer to any questions, but rather a tool to get started to indicate areas for future engagement, for future research, for future relationship building. With that, I will stop there, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Darcy. What questions do people have on that so far? I guess well, people.
Darcy,
Oh,
I would just say that this is a pretty impressive tool. I don't know all the elements of it yet, obviously, but I sure do like the way one could begin to get a better and more accurate picture of the opportunity areas and the need areas. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to my colleagues, the data scientists in research that put a lot of work into making this tool, but we do hope that it will be a useful way for people to get started to explore some of their questions that they have. And I also do want to issue an invitation if there are specific questions, chair, commissioners, council member, that you would like to explore. I'm available for any kind of brainstorming or technical assistance that would be helpful. Yeah, and thank you for that comment.
Can you show us again how you get to this tool?
Yes, I'm gonna have to go back to my kind of strange. Okay, so I'm gonna try to just go to parks. So anywhere on the Met Council page, all roads lead to parks. You can get there. There's the tab right there. And so if you choose planning, and you see here you have Commissioner, the equity tool, and you can click on it there. And then we have a few things here, but this is that top option, the Regional Parks and Trails Equity Tool. And then I'm sure that you keep all of your documentation that you get from MPOSC forever, and the link is within the info item memo. And so, you can get it to it that way too.
Okay, thank you.
That's what the website is for, Darcy. That's where things live forever.
That's true.
I was just going to echo one thing that Darcy started off with, which is the best way to learn about this tool is to just get on it and start experimenting with it, because it really is something where you really understand it better the more you use it, or just play around with it. Like the next park or trail master plan that comes in, you might want to take a look at it. So thank you.
Sure.
This is Monica Dillenburg, which is exactly what I was gonna say, Emmett. I got the email, and I actually was curious about it, and I think I spent like a good hour or an hour and a half playing with that. Not that I'm gonna build a park anytime soon, but I was telling this is pretty interesting. I think it's a great tool. It has a lot of information, and I can see how it's gonna work for many things. Yes.
Thank you. So one thing I'm going to bring up for our commissioners to think about, when each of you were interviewed for your positions, you would have heard some kind of question along the lines of how do you balance representing your own district with representing the needs of the region and thinking about that dual approach. And part of what I want you to think about is combining sort of the local knowledge of your district where you can have a degree of detail beyond what everybody else might know about your area and being able to bring that to our conversations at the regional level. And this is an example here because maps, of course, can tell us a lot of things, but maps without context can also be a little bit misleading. And I was reminded of two examples as Darcy was showing these of the kinds of things that you're going to be wanting to be aware of. So when you were showing the percentage of Spanish speakers, in northern Arden Hills, there is a rather large census block. You know, census blocks are not the same physical size. You see a pretty big blue blob, and you're thinking, oh, that must be a whole bunch of people there. Well, what's actually happening is that that census block is so physically large because that's an area that's mostly uninhabited, with a combination of the old Army ammunition plant, the current National Guard facility, Arden Hills City Hall, some Ramsey County parkland, and some land that's been acquired for development but not yet developed. And in the far southwest corner of that, there is actually a manufactured home park. So there's a very small population there, but it has a outsized amount of people of various minority groups and lower income groups, things like that. So that's where it's getting the Spanish speaker percentage from. But when you just look at the map, it looks like a whole bunch of people because it's this physically large blue spot. So you have to kind of know how to balance out, okay, what I'm seeing on the map visually is not necessarily the same as on the ground because there are people there that are different, but it's not necessarily this whole big swath because most of that's uninhabited. Similarly, I know my mom mentioned a time when she was talking to the Met Council planners in the transit area related to running the BRT line that's planned up Snelling Avenue into Arden Hills. And they had a similar kind of map going of the lower income groups. And they had flagged one spot as, oh, there's a bunch of low income here people. And what that was actually was the campus of Bethel College, which, yes, the actual students themselves were lower income because they weren't working for the most part, but it's a expensive private school, so they're not people who come necessarily from low income backgrounds for the most part. So that kind of stuff is not always conveyed by what you see on the map. So when we're looking at these big picture things, bring those kinds of local knowledge details to inform our conversations of, yes, this one is actually showing what we think, or this one's actually showing something a little bit different than we might have thought, to help correct our knowledge as we use these tools to plan, because they, like this says, what this tool cannot do, it can't know those kinds of details or how to interpret them, but you, as someone who lives in your area, might know those kinds of things, be able to tell us more about the things that we have to consider in our map. And Darcy, some pet of yours, I think, is
Yes,
wagging.
Chair Russo, he is demanding attention, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That this tool is not a substitute for local on the ground knowledge at all. I appreciate you making that point.
The tail made it look like you had a like a feather quill pen that you were waving around because it was right over your hand.
Yes.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, I guess. Well, I'm just going to say, well, if you feel pretty proud of it, I'm going to have to play with it a little bit. So I'm trying to tell you, why did we create this? But who's really the audience?
Commissioner, you broke up a little bit, but I think you asked the question of who is really the audience for this, and I appreciate that question. We do have several imagined audiences. I don't know if you can see the screen, but specifically it was designed for planners as they work on question number 1 to the equity analysis requirement for park and trail long range plans. But we also imagine that it can be used for outreach and engagement learning, for programming, and also for research. And it's available to the public for anyone. I'm sure that others will come up with other innovative ways to use it.
Is there, you know, in terms of the language, like for example, what you're using at 185% of poverty, is that typical way to talk about it versus the Met Council typically talk about AMI and percent AMI as opposed to that?
So thanks for that question, Commissioner. That was, I may ask if Lisa Barajas, the CD director, might know. At the time, that is a benchmark that is used as a standard in other council work, but I can revisit that concept, revisit that to give you a better answer.
I mean, isn't it, I mean, not just some, but isn't the standard AMI, we're using percent AMI regionally and in our municipal government in terms of how we're measuring?
Commissioner, I appreciate that question. I know it is benchmarked to a standard, but I don't have the information in front of me what that standard is, and so I can revisit that and get you a better answer.
Mr. Chair, Darcy, I might be able to help, but I can't quite hear Commissioner Taylor what that question was. I don't know if someone could repeat it for me.
Yeah, I think he's wondering a couple of things there. One is kind of basically where is that 185% of poverty line coming from? And does that match up with where we're using numbers elsewhere in council planning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, the standards that we use to measure both area median income and 185% of poverty rate are federal standards. We use that consistently across all of our work, whether it's here in parks, in our housing work, in our transportation work. It just makes it easier for communication and also for consistency across how we address different issues. We totally understand that a regional area median income, for example, can obscure affordability in certain areas. And certainly, as Chair Yaruso and Darcy spoke to earlier, on the ground knowledge always helps, but this is meant to be a more comparative tool. But yes, those are federal standards that we apply locally, and that's pretty typical across regions, across the nation as well to do that. Also helps us compete for federal dollars whenever we need to do that when we're already benchmarking to federal standards.
Okay, yeah, I think that's useful to know. And his other half that I think Darcy can mostly already answered was kind of who the audience is and what the ideas are. And it sounds like, you know, the immediate audience is planners, but there could be other things coming up as well.
And Chair and Commissioner Taylor, I did want to add the question, you know, about the 185%, the 185% below poverty. There is also an option to choose mean household income, which might be a designation that would be useful in other contexts and for communicating to a more general audience.
Okay, sure. Does that get to what you were wondering, Anthony?
Yeah, I guess I feel like I see most of them at council. For example, the work on housing seems to use AMI, you know, in a more, I feel like that's more kind of the way that we talk at a community level. So that was, but I could be wrong. That's why I was kind of asking.
Okay, yeah, it probably gets into some sort of subtle distinctions depending on exactly what they're talking about. I don't know enough about that. Are there other questions for Darcy or Lisa on this? And one comment I'll bring up, besides users in terms of planning and things, This also potentially has use for the general public as an accountability tool where they can use it to measure our progress on some things if anyone is really into data and can delve into that. So it'll be something to think about in how we present it as well. I don't know that it'll be used a lot that way, but there might be some people that are good at data analysis within certain communities that might check on this to see how we're moving across the years.
Yeah, Chair Garusa, thanks for that comment. And I would want to point out at unit level data is that you can, I neglected to point out this feature that you can download the data to work with. And so the audiences, stakeholders that you mentioned might find that of use as well.
Oh, cool. Okay. So they can export it into whatever tool they're used to dealing with to further mess with the numbers.
Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? All right, I guess we have something to go play around with and learn a bit more about. Thank you for that, Darcy. I think with that, then we'll move on to the reports portion of our meeting. And we'll hear more about this, I'm sure, from Emmett. But I know one thing I want to bring up is that we are getting into legislative session, so we're going to have various things in financial appropriations from the legislature, hopefully. I did see that there is a governor's recommendation for a bonding bill. I haven't seen any matching stuff drafted yet in the initial bills proposed in the legislature itself, but I do know that we have some things in the governor's recommendation that kind of bypasses our usual capital improvement plan distribution formula. And we've seen that in past years as well, with certain projects being kind of earmarked separately. And I just want to say to any representatives from our implementing agencies that are listening, please try to get that to not happen, because that really messes with our overall process and the fairness of the regional system if we have some parks and trails that are getting things directly and others that are getting them by formula, because it reduces the amount available for the formulaic distribution. We've historically had the luxury of not having all of our implementing agencies having to fight with each other over money because we had this formulaic distribution, but it seems like in recent years that's kind of fallen apart a little bit, and I don't know where that's coming from exactly. Of course, legislators want to fight for their districts, but it does make our work harder when we kind of lose some of that regional view and trust between our agencies. So if we could try to get that down to just the single capital improvement program appropriation and distribute it as normal, I think that really helps with our overall regional strategy and fairness for all of our agencies, not just the ones that can lobby for something separately. So I'm hoping we can see some progress on that throughout the course of session. Commissioner reports. We have at least one.
Yes. This is Monica. Is that okay if I talk, Tony?
Yes, go ahead.
So to make the long story short, we saw the Dakota's explanation when they came and we watched the video, and then it made me thinking, in 2018, I have the opportunity to visit my brother in Sydney, Australia. And it surprised me that in Australia, every time that they start a meeting or an event, they make an acknowledgement of the land, which means that they recognize the tribes and the indigenous people that live in Australia before the conquer came. And sometimes they do it in the native language if they have a person who is present who can do it. If not, they just acknowledge that they recognize their presence and their importance. And then I emailed Emmett and I was talking to Tony, and I thought it would be a really nice idea if we can do something like that over our meetings as a commission, and then see if we can go from there. I think most of you seem to be interested in the Native Americans and recognize their presence here. Now, after talking to Tony, and I agree, we need to be careful how this is made because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to recognize the wrong tribe, and it's something that it needs a little more of research, I'm sure. But I just want to know, let you know that I think it's a good idea, and I hope some of you support it, if not all of you, of course.
Yeah, thank you for that. As mentioning to Monica earlier on the phone, that gets kind of complicated in ways that are a bit beyond my expertise of how to do it well. So if other people have encountered that elsewhere or know of some resources for it and that kind of thing, let us know, because we're going to have to learn a bit if we want to do some sort of land acknowledgement about how that's done thoughtfully and accurately. And kind of how that might tie in with the way we operate. There's certainly some happening at individual parks, but how does that relate to our group itself here at IMPOSC? So trying to figure out some of that. I know Emmett has some possible training opportunities that might be related to that coming up later this year. So it'll be something to keep in the back of your mind as we move forward. Any other commissioner reports?
Chair, this is Todd Kimmery.
Yes, hello Todd, you made it.
I did, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to be able to let you and the rest of the commissioners know that I met with Nikki Geisler, the new Parks Director over Dakota County, and herself and Jeff Bransford. We're starting up our meetings. We like to try and get a meeting together before MPOSC has what we're doing today. So started that process, and we'll continue on now until somebody forces us to stay indoors. Thank you.
All right, good to hear. Thank you, Todd. Any other commissioners? All right, hearing none, staff reports.
Yeah, Chair, Commissioners, Council Member, first of all, I just want to recognize Commissioner Dillenberg's report on the exploration of a land acknowledgement. That's a really interesting and exciting idea, and it's one that I really appreciated Monica's desire to do this thoughtfully and with meaning. And so we do have a historical cultural study going on right now as part of the regional park system. And this is something that we could include as part of that study in terms of how do we do this well. I did want to recognize that our current chair and of the Community Development Committee and a council member, Robert Lilligren, who is a band member, and he just advised us to go carefully here. And he said there are a lot of land acknowledgements, and he didn't use these exact words, but he said they're becoming kind of trendy, and we really don't want it to be a performative thing. We really want it to be done in a respectful and meaningful way. And I know that is the wishes of all of you. So we will keep this conversation alive, and we will bring something back to you. The historical cultural study is moving forward, and it's while it's slow, it's coming back, and we'll be visiting with you commissioners about that in the near future. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. In addition, I have 3 very short reports. Anthony, Commissioner Taylor wants to speak, and I'm guessing it'll be on the land acknowledgement. So I will stop and hold my other reports. Anthony.
Thanks, Emmett. Yeah, thank you. I hope everybody can hear. I will say that I really appreciate Robert's advice. I as well, and I'll say hello to Nikki Geisler. A matter of fact, I've gone through with really 3 organizations now where we've explored it, and just recently, in terms of my own work, I literally wrote down now beyond the land acknowledgement, and it's actually some of the work we're doing around equity training, and some work that actually Nikki and I will get a chance to delve into around the idea that for every organization that is related to public land, um, through our park system, the National Park Service, or even the YMCA, who I'm associated with, and we own land and give camps, that there is something really important for us in terms of our work that is literally beyond the land acknowledgement. And part of it that I will say that is really interesting personally for me, that's hard, we're not giving the land back, right? That's a really a hard part of this, and part of the guidance that we've got on land acknowledgement is that the way that it gets, the way that it is not performative or trendy, is that it gets specifically to the work that we're doing around our relationships to the communities on the land, near the land, or formerly, built their homes on the land that we now own. And so it actually is a very important thing. And Robert is a great guide for us on that. But I think all of our park systems, the leaders that I've been talking to, they're digging into this work deeply. And I think Dakota County, Three Rivers, and again, for us at the Y, some of the stuff we're doing around that may give us some guidance as we lean into that as well. So appreciate the caution that we move forward with. Thanks.
Thank you, Anthony. All right. I'll go ahead and pick up with the rest of yours then, Emmett.
Thank you, Chair. Reiterating also what the chair said about the governor's budget came out, and he did include $3 million for the regional park system. If that was appropriated, the council would match it with $2 million in council funds for a total of a $5 million regional park system bonding program. So I will be tracking this closely, and I will keep you up to date on that. Not the last word, I'm quite sure. Secondly, commissioners, you may have noticed you were included in the Regional Parks quarterly newsletter. This is something that the Regional Parks team, Nicole Clapp specifically is our lead, puts together quarterly. And we really want it to be newsworthy and informative. And we actually created this back in April of 2020. And we were kind of slow to expand our audiences until we really kind of got it moving. And well, I hope you enjoy it. We have included the MPOS commissioners. It means we're coming up in the world. But please, if you have questions about anything in the newsletter, reach out to staff. I had a fun little item on there. There's actually a link to a video interview with the Washington County Park Director, Sandy Brewer, and we went out and explored the Cottage Grove Ravine Regional Park and some of the great Parks and Trails legacy investments out there, and what a big difference that fund is making in Washington County. So that's just a little fun thing, and you can expect that to come out every quarter. My last thing is the council has a National Recreation and Park Association membership, and NRPA, that's the acronym, is a really amazing organization with a lot of educational tools, professional development, and we have a membership, and we can extend this to you commissioners. And I think many of you are already on the distribution list for this. But I was recently updating our membership, and I noticed that a handful of you are not. Commissioners Brown, Yang, and Dillenberg. If you're interested in joining that, or any of the other commissioners are interested in joining that, please let me know and I'll get you on the distribution list. I want to warn you, you do get a few emails, but you can sort them out. So stay in touch with me on that. Those are my reports. Thank you for your time tonight. Back to you, Tony.
All right, thank you, Emmett. Do we have any other comments from our liaison today?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to commend Darcy for her presentation. I have a feeling that I'll be spending some late nights having fun with this great tool. So thank you, Darcy.
Yeah, poking around at maps is definitely one of those rabbit holes that I can go down and then realize that it's 4 in the morning. All right, well, thank you. Well, in that case, thank you, everybody, and I believe we are ready to adjourn. See you next month.
Have a